Hi there, thanks for coming back to the channel. Just gonna make a new video here about some changes I've made in my FPV ground station. For years I've used a home-built 5.8 GHz diversity receiver that I manufactured some while ago, and recently I had a chance to pick up one of these, the Quanum 5.8 gig diversity receiver, and thought I'd spring for one of these and see how it worked, and decided to use them in conjunction with my new Pagoda and Triple Patch antennas, which is what I've got set up here. Hopefully that's in focus. That's the receiver there. I've just got that set up in a vise at the moment, just try to hold it steady. Quite impressed actually with the functionality of this little diversity receiver. And as you can see, I've got the Pagoda antenna mounted on one port and the Triple Patch antenna mounted on the other. Screen actually gives you quite a bit of information. A little OLED display on there. Hopefully that's going to focus now. Zoom out of it. Still not going to focus. So you can see the I've got a local transmitter running here on the frequency. You can see the display showing that each port on the receiver currently receiving 100% signal. It's in diversity mode, which obviously switches, and it's currently showing by the LED on the left that Triple Patch antenna is currently the active antenna, but also showing in blue that the other antenna is receiving a valid video signal. So that's a setup. I was out yesterday and gave this a test. So let's jump into some video and see how it went. Okay, here we are in the air. I skipped the hand launch to try and shorten this video a little bit. I think it's going to be too long to start with, but not to worry. So we picked the flight up there just under 2 kilometers out, so we'll stay on the screen. See the distance from home in the bottom center. It's the top of the two lines. The one below that is the total flight distance. So we're kind of just interested in the second from bottom line in the center there, really. So yeah, I'm quite impressed with this functionality of this little diversity receiver. Quite a few features in it actually. We'll scan, and you can set it up in different ways. Can actually use the two receivers as separate receivers, or you can run it in diversity mode, which is what I'm doing here now, which is the intention for me, of course. Our field's a little bit strange actually. We got some trees around that actually interferes with the video signal, and if you get behind the trees it can attenuate the signal quite badly at 5.8 gigahertz. As I'm not really flying too high here, I've just gone over 4 kilometers out now. Signal's still looking
reasonable, and of course I'm at ground level. I made a 3D printed bracket to mount that receiver into on the top of my pole. It sits up about 15 feet or so. But heading this direction, the trees always come into play. And that's probably what you've just evidenced there. Right now. That's probably the tree getting between me at the ground station and the aircraft, and the receiver pulling back and forward between the two ports, looking for the best signal. There's me just turning slightly left to get away from the tree, and you'll see as I do that the video comes clear again. Of course you could combat that with a little bit more height or chop down the trees, which would probably be the best of the two options. So there's our coastline. Sea's looking blue, sky's looking blue. Wasn't a bad morning. It's pretty early, around about 8 o'clock I believe. And we're just really heading out nicely there. Still, video's good. Obviously the diversity receiver has now pulled onto the patch antenna, and that's what it's using at this point to get its signal back to me. There we are, just gone 6 kilometers out and increasing a little bit. That picture's really acceptable. So on the aircraft I have a 600 milliwatt VTX and a Pagoda style antenna on the transmitter. And obviously we've cleared the trees now around where I'm sitting, and kind of in the clear, so the picture has become quite solid. Another feature of this receiver that I really like is that it has audible feedback, and that's great for someone flying FPV in goggles or in a headset, because obviously you can't see what's going on around you, but when it changes from one port to the other, it beeps and lets you know that it's made the change. And that's a nice feature to have. It also beeps when you power it on. Any sort of audible feedback, as far as I'm concerned, when you're flying FPV, there's always good feedback. So yeah, quite impressed with it. It's a good buy. Wasn't very expensive, truthfully, for the spec of it. A spectrum analyzer on it too, of sorts, which you could use as a rudimentary spectrum analyzer. Nothing more than that, mind you. But good to have that feature anyway, so they've crammed quite a bit into there. So the triple patch antenna seems to be working very fine. Made a turn away from the coast now, heading back inland. On this nice summer's morning, which is a change for us. It was very warm. Which was nice. HD recording cameras, my trusty old Firefly Q6. Due down the coastline there. The OSD camera, I believe, is a run cam. I may need to get into the menu on that a little bit actually and play about with the brightness and the colour. I think I could just do a little bit less colour in it actually. Nose of the Skywalker. Lots of wind farms around here. We get an awful lot of wind. Which really doesn't help this hobby of ours, but something you have to contend with. Unfortunately, if you live in this part of the world. So we're heading back nicely here. 4.3 kilometres out or so to get back home. Kind of following that road a little bit. Just in case there's any need to ditch the aircraft for whatever reason. Just take a try and recover some of it or get some of it back anyway. That will be the hope. So yeah, so far I'm enjoying that Quantum diversity receiver. The only problem I did have with it was it's actually dead on arrival out the box. I took delivery and brought it up here to my room and wired a connector onto it and plugged it into the battery. Absolutely nothing. Stone dead. Never lit up. Display, nothing at all. But wow, this is strange. Took it away and checked the battery. Battery was okay, but I changed it out anyway. Got another battery. Same thing. Totally dead. So this is weird. So I took the 3 screws out the back of the unit, took the back off, took the front off and took the PCB out. Had a look at the printed circuit board. Couldn't find anything obvious in there. Just started having a good look around. This thing's got a kind of a wide voltage input range, so obviously there's some sort of switch mode power supply on the board, which is the first thing that the power socket sees. So I started tracing that back and found an integrated circuit close to it and managed with a magnifying glass to get the numbers off the integrated circuit and went onto the internet, got a spec sheet to find out it was a DC to DC converter. So I knew that, found down the input pins and which pins corresponded to the connector on the board, on the power jack, and found out that the lead that's supplied in the box was cross-polarized. So in its native form, the receiver, the pin that plugs into the receiver needs to be centre positive, as it is in most instances, and outer negative, but they had wired this thing to be centre negative, outer positive, with the red and black leads correspondingly. So luckily, whoever designed the receiver had the good sense to put a reverse polarity protection diode in there. Else this thing, in my case, and I suspect many others too, may have just gone up in smoke as soon as someone had taken it out of the box, powered it up with the supplied lead and GST power connector, which was wired incorrectly. So that was the little story with respect to that. So anyway, I did away with the power jack because they can be a little bit susceptible to strain. So I bypassed that and I hardwired the positive and the negative into the PCB, and that in turn takes its power from the main board on my ground station. So just a warning for anybody buying one of these or intending buying one. When it comes, if it doesn't power up, check the polarity on the plug. The center of that plug should be positive, not negative. So okay, we're heading back to the field nicely. APM autopilot still in cruise, as that's the mode I like to fly in. So it's maintained the altitude consistently throughout the flight. Looks like we're about 1.3 kilometers out there now. I've made a left turn because the wind at the field, I've just switched into stabilise, starting a descent. The wind at the field was coming always from the wrong direction, so I decided this flight to land it into the wind, which is a difficult approach due to the power lines, trees and things that are around there. But in fact, both the approaches to our strip are not that good because of trees and hedges, but you just really get on with it and make the best of a bad job. So there, looks like we dropped down to, is that 90, 97 meters or so. And because I'm coming into the wind, the airspeed dropped. You heard the throttle pick up there a little bit. So we gained a wee bit of altitude and now dropping it down again. Follow the road along. Looks like the diversity receiver just switched on to the Pagoda antenna. See the field up ahead. Dropping down even more, losing more altitude. Keeping an eye on the power lines. Nice shadow, the Skywalker on the ground. right into the wind now, so just above the power lines, blipping the throttle to try and keep away from them, but it's like a magnet to RC planes. Strips up ahead. Still in the headset at this point, doing an FPV landing, trying to hit that strip. Wind just catches me and just puts me off to the right of the strip. So there's the landing. Stats are up on the screen. 22-minute flight. Farthest from home, 6.1 kilometers. Total flight distance 16 kilometers, and I use 4.1 amps of battery with 10 amps on board.